Okay, let me do a live update, which I'm trying not to do because I'm uploading videos and all. And of course, what is it? August 4th, okay, 2018. But there was a few things that I said, oh, maybe I'll do an update. Then there was another thing, and then there was another thing. So I can't, hopefully I'll get them all. The other day, well, let me just do this first. You know, I was riding on my motorcycle and I didn't see somebody that I mentioned. He didn't go to like told the spot. And even as I was coming back to the house, he must have saw me on my motorcycle in the street and stopped, a block down the road. So that made it quite obvious to me. All right, that's it on that. My friend Mark Baker, who's the cook at Timmins, a friend of mine for many years, he came out of I was at the mission the other day, and he came out and he said, John, who was the guys? Because he knows I know everybody on the street. And he said, who was it that got hit by a car and run over on their bicycle? And I said, Mark, I have not heard anything, but I read and check all the news all the time. I actually have bought the Corpus paper again, but I check every single local news site. And I said, Mark, as far as I know, I don't think anybody would have got run over on their bicycle with all the problems we have. He said, no, John, I heard it happened in front of the Goodwill in Flower Bluff. And I had a friend of mine die less than a month ago, Steve, run over here on his bike. So I just said, Mark, I haven't heard anything about it. But most of all, I check every single local news site all day, every day. I'm just a news person as well as national news. I left it at that. Then yesterday, my friend Ted showed up with his arm in a cast, mangled up fairly well. I said, what happened? I got run over on my bicycle in front of Goodwill. I said, Ted, they asked about it. He told me the whole story. He was just riding. The guy didn't see him, ran him over. Pretty severe injuries besides a broken arm and other things. Now, I was pretty sure it was a rumor that somebody got run over because no local media covered that. But it was my friend Ted. It's Frankie's brother, and even his cousin Rick Mason. He was in my Bible studies, and just a family, problems with drugs, but friends of mine. So I thought that was interesting that there was not a single report on that. Okay, now, my friend Mike told me the other day, he said, John, it was a very serious motorcycle wreck that happened in front of Barton Street Pub. All of these streets are right the streets you see me walk. And he said the guy was going down, car pulled out in front of him, he flipped over, you could see him flying, landed in the middle of the street. And, I at first thought, I think some of my friends think maybe I should wear a helmet or whatever. I told them, look, I've been in wrecks before. I'm familiar with motorcycles because I don't wear my helmet. So I thought maybe some of my friends were trying to, just make stuff up to warn me. But then I saw my friend Jason, who works there too. All of these friends all know each other. He said, man, John, you should have seen the motorcycle wreck in front of Barton Street Pub 2 days ago. I guess that both of these things must have happened close to the same day. He said, oh, you could see him from inside the bar, you could see some guy flying in the air. That was unreported. On every single media, local media did not report that. And then I realized the media is going to do what the media does. They're going to present a picture that they would prefer people to see. Now, you've heard me speak about that I always question whether there were unreported homicides. And I'll tell you, those two examples are just two that happened here in my little area of Flower Bluff that I knew from word of mouth. Can you imagine how many in a population of about 300,000 people? And just for me, those two, within a few days, unreported. Figure how many are unreported this past week. We used to have, well, normally what the local media does, they did this in Kingsville. Every day or every few days, they came and checked all the runs. I mean, any car wrecks, any fires, all of that would be regularly reported. And I found it interesting that both of those and how many more were not reported. That was the last thing I said. I want to speak on that. When I went into Stripes, this is not anything wrong about the local store, that the one on Flower Bluff Drive. I had to get another pack of cigarettes because I gave so many away. And they have 2 cash registers. They're a fine store, but oftentimes one of the cash registers, nobody's working it, but it doesn't say this register is closed. They have another register where people buy food, and sometimes that's just the food line one, and then people go to the other one. But sometimes it's just the one line they use for everybody. When I walked in Stripes, the line was long, and I thought the convenience store on Flower Bluff Drive just a little while ago, I thought, oh, maybe I'll just go somewhere else to get cigarettes. But I've done that before, and it takes too much time. So there might have been 10 people in line because they're buying the food, bringing up the food, but there was a young black man, I would say in his 20s, and he had like a cane, and there might have been some disability, possibly, but he was innocently in the other line, which looked like it would be open, like somebody's going to come, you could buy your soda, whatever there, and the other line was a food line. Now, when I walked in, he was already in that line, and like 10 other people in the other line. And I thought myself, oh, maybe I'll go to that line. Sometimes that's for everything else, the other one for food. And he was just standing there. So I got in the long line, because I heard one of the workers at the Stripe say, oh, no, you have to start all over like in the other line. And he didn't really understand. And he was still waiting there. Other people came in and got behind me. But that young man was in line even before I walked in the store. And then another girl came up and said, no, you have to go stand in the other line. And he kind of, and I said out loud, I said, really we should let him get in front of us. It looked very bad. I understand that they didn't realize how bad that looked for a young black man. And the others of us were white or Hispanic. They didn't intend it to be prejudicial, but just out of fairness, I thought we should let him get in front of us. And then he kind of went back and bought a long line. And then they opened up that register. And everyone from the front and that black kid had to wait. And it made me feel uncomfortable to see that. And then when I walked out of Stripes, there was cash on the ground. A wad of cash in front of a truck. I looked at it. I parked my motorcycle by the gas pumps anyway. Even if I don't get gas, it's easier for me, where I could pull out. And I said, let me pick this cash up. It was in front of a truck, and it was a wad of it, all rolled up. And the guy in the truck was looking at me. I was a little mad because of this incident I just described. I picked it up. I could just put it in my pocket, but I said, is this yours? And he got out of the truck, but they were from somewhere else. They had a Spanish accent, but it wasn't Tex-Mex, they were maybe some other South Central American tourists or something. because I could tell the accent was different. Maybe like the Spanish I would hear where I grew up with Puerto Rican and Spanish friends of mine, Cuban. And he said, oh, yes, it's ours. And so I didn't yell at him. I said, look, don't lie to me. If it's yours, I'll give it to you. My son jerked, and then his young son, maybe 10, got out, and that's why I knew it was a different accent. He said, oh, yeah, he knew it was his money. I said, that's fine, here. And that was just, you want to trust people, you want to do what's right. Those two things I wanted to mention because those were two incidents. We had a local, I don't want to do too much, there's a lot of news things that, the courts, I'm pro-immigrant. And we had this problem with the immigration thing, which is a problem. It's a problem because we want to treat people fairly. But I saw in the news today, a federal judge ordered Trump to reinstate DACA. I would prefer something better than DACA. But why is that? So, DACA was an executive order by a well-meaning president who I don't dislike, President Obama, but DACA was considered to be an overstep of an executive order, meaning you can't do as much as Mr. Obama did, meaning through an executive order. But presidents have made executive orders, and oftentimes when another president comes in, if the former president made an executive order, meaning it's not law, it's not passed by Congress, oftentimes the next president just rescinds them, no questions asked. There's no legal authority when you rescind an executive order. Every legal scholar anywhere would tell you, of course you can do that. What a president cannot do is make law or rescind law, okay? He cannot do that. He works with Congress to pass certain things, as veto power, things of that nature. So when the federal judge said, I guess today, I order a president, no matter who it is, I order a president by demand to reinstate an executive order from a previous president that, by the way, happened to have been an overstep. Any honest opinion of anywhere, whatever side you're on, says that is a total hoax and sham. But the media will never tell you that. They would never tell you that. It would, we have the three branches of government, okay? And any judge that would ever say, I order a president by force to reinstate an executive order, which is not law. The courts can rule on whether laws are constitutional or unconstitutional, and they challenge. Politics challenges those things, and ultimately sometimes those challenges make it to the Supreme Court. So courts can, like, if there's a law passed and states sue and say, we think this law is unfair or whatever, but never in the history, and I didn't have to look at it, but I would tell you, just look at it yourself. Never in the history of jurisprudence did a judge ever command a sitting president to reinstate an executive order that was considered an illegal executive order. But even if an executive order was considered legal, many presidents have made them, you also would have no standing by a court or a judge to tell another president, you must reinstate an executive order from a previous president. It's just that the media is such a joke because they won't explain what it just took me, 8 minutes to explain. That's the whole thing. That's the whole problem going on. Regardless of your view on either side, can you imagine a judge telling Mr. Obama, whatever it was, I commend you, Mr. Obama, by force of the bench, to reinstate an executive order from Bush. Even an executive order that we feel was wrong, but I commend you to reinstate it. We're not talking about something that was passed by Congress, not an act like the Patriot Act, which later had to be changed by Congress themselves. That would never fly anywhere. So we're in a point in these areas of our country where if a justice decreed, and our country is in serious problems because of the decrees that legalize the termination of a fully formed child. Those decrees were made by courts, and those were unjust decrees. Just as unjust as the racist decrees that were made in the past. There were also precedent, various ones that were precedent by the Supreme Court that had to be overturned later because no matter, regardless of how long they were in force, they were racist. I've quoted those the last few months. So this is just an update. I want you to be aware of that. Those are the two local cases. Serious vehicular accidents involving citizens within a few days of each other, all happening within the last 5 days, that made no media coverage. So the local media, for whatever reason, I'm assuming that, I don't even know if they ever go in and look at the runs, meaning you look at the run log. You look at how many responses went out, fire, ambulance, police. So I'm assuming they're just going to not report a lot of things that somebody looking at a region would want to know. What are your runs? What are your drive-bys? Or what look, if they're not reporting them, then you're not going to know about it, okay? That's just an update.